The main reason for doing that is that I can deal with that emotion, and and also within 3 days, why I'm totally off margin. And if I really like the stock, it's a totally different emotional state being whether you're on margin or not on margin. And going all the way to being totally off margin is very important for your emotional state. And so that's almost invariably what I do. In the last year, I've done a similar situation, and and I'm very comfortable with that. But it's a good point in that um, if you don't have a discipline like that, your odds of remaining as a successful speculator for any significant period of time is best described as zero. As I said, when my natural father died in Baltimore, my mother moved out to San Francisco Bay Area and she met the then mayor of Mill Valley, California, which is about 20 miles north across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco in Marin County. And as I mentioned, he was involved in the stock market, had an investment firm, and so I start with that situation. And as I got into the market uh, during my teen years, I my older brother went to a private school, uh, which had a very good reputation, and I had enough, incentive or achievement or orientation to say, well, I want to get the best education I can get, and so I wanted to go to, name of the school is Thatcher in Ojai, California, pretty close to Santa Barbara. And so I was 4 years at Thatcher, and I think by the end of the time there, I wasn't I was on the varsity tennis team. I think I was number 4 playing tennis, which is uh, my favorite sport. And so after that, then I went to college, and I went to Stanford. And I have to say that at this time, we're talking about I started at Stanford in 1961. Uh, the fact that I was at Thatcher was a huge advantage on getting into Stanford, because the admissions people at Stanford had long connections with Thatcher. And I think my class, the size of my class at Thatcher was something like 20, and 4 or 5 of us went to Stanford the same year. I mean, to do that today would be essentially impossible with all the you know, the percentage of people that want to go to Stanford that get in is very, very tiny. And my guess is that the ability of schools like Thatcher to work well with the admissions is no longer nearly as prevalent. So anyway, I went to Stanford, and I should probably mention, along with my gambling instinct, the other main one of the other main theme of to understand who I am. You can probably see it if you were to turn the camera to all the books that I have, and that is a love of history. And so I majored in history at Stanford, and already had been reading a lot about history, including history of business, and that was to have a great importance to me later on when I got into another game, which is startup venture capital, on what books that talked about business history did I find was useful in deciding what to invest in? And the answer to that question, in terms of specific books, is the great American, well, originally Scottish entrepreneur Andrew Carnegie, a book by Wall on Andrew Carnegie. And one of the lessons I learned from that book was that he was involved in marketing of the steel. And this would be in the 1860s, just a little after the Civil War. And he'd been working on the railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad, um, and had contact with the CEO of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So they were building um, a new steel mill, which really took all of Carnegie's money to get done. And the question was, okay, how are we going to market the steel, mostly to the railroad industry? And so he sends the head of the Pennsylvania Railroad a letter, and he said, "We just had a meeting of our, a team on our new steel mill, and we couldn't figure out what are we going to call it." And someone said, "Let's call it Edgar Thomson." And so, Mr. Thompson, we're asking if we were to call our steel mill after your name, if that would be all right. Well, after about a week or two, back comes a letter from Edgar Thomson, the CEO of the Pennsylvania Railroad, and he said, "Well, your choice of names is I am all right with your choice of names." So now the salesmen are going into Pennsylvania Railroad and saying, "Hey, we've got another, 1,000 tons of steel rails, and that we've just produced at the Edgar Thomson plant." So there's an example of the importance of names, and also the importance of marketing involved in startups. I kind of have two rules of business. Then when asked, I will say, okay, the first rule of business is you can never overemphasize the importance of marketing. Rule number two, if you have any questions about business, consult rule number one. And part of that came from reading and rereading, I should say, the Wall biography of Carnegie. So my interest in history is a very important way of how I think of it, as I think historically. What I will do when I'm trying to think about it, involved with some new issue, including a company, gee, am I going to buy this stock, or this, that, or the other? And if I know the history of the company, I can use that knowledge as a perspective on whether or not I'm going to buy it. So and then also in my time away from the financial markets every day, I will normally read a little history. Right now, I've got a book called Re-Entry about Elon Musk and SpaceX. Right, the history of Elon Musk. So that's an example. I will finally say, if I were asked what the history of what business person probably had the greatest impact on me, it would have to be The Little Kingdom, which was a biography of the start of Apple computer and Steve Jobs. So those are examples of how I will use reading and history as a part of my speculative universe. After I got out of Stanford, I couldn't get a job anywhere. And the reason was that we're talking about 1965, and like a month before I graduated, no, about a month after I graduated. Um, the then President of the United States, his name was Lyndon Baines Johnson, he said, "We will stand in Vietnam and we're going to draft everybody in the country, including recent uh, college graduates like me." I had seen that coming um, a couple of weeks in advance, just after I graduated uh, from Stanford, and I said to myself, "How do I feel about you know being being drafted?" And I said, "With my eyesight, I'm nearsighted. I said, if they put me in the combat line, it would be about a pretty good chance that we'd already lost the war." So I said to myself, what are my options? And so, having thought about it, I took my car and I went over to San Francisco to the armory for the California National Guard. And I said, I'd like to join up. They said, sign here, you're in. 2 weeks later, Johnson says, okay, we're going to draft everybody and his brother. And so all the National Guard armories, the recruits came pouring in, but I was already in. And so reason I couldn't get a job is I hadn't been to basic training yet. So every time I go to try to get hired, somebody would say, well, Mr. Leppo, what's your draft status? And I would say, well, I'm in the National Guard. And they say, and have you been to basic training? And I said, well, no, not yet. And they say, well, as soon as you get out of basic training, do give us a call. Have a happy day. So this went on for like 6 months. And my father, Harrison Leppo, was kind of doing the, what do you call it? Kind of the father bird with the nestling, kind of, pushing them out of the out of the nest. And so I was pretty good at taking multiple choice tests, and I saw that there was a test for the state of California, State Personnel Board. And so I took the test, and they offered me a job, and they didn't care in Sacramento whether I'd gone to basic training or not. So up I go and live in Sacramento for about a year and a half, making up multiple choice tests, and then I got the call from my National Guard people, and they said, "Okay, we're ready for basic training." And this would have been in right at the end of 1966, and so I was in basic training for like 4 months, the absolute minimum to qualify. And so while I was in basic training, I said to myself, I think I want to go to business school. And I was smart enough while I was at Stanford to take the business board test, and had done very well on that, which was good for 5 years. And so I was lucky to get into Harvard Business School, which I attended. I was through business through the basic training. I'm going to say in June or July of 1967, and then started Harvard Business School in September. So that worked out smoothly.